The House Committee on Elections will come to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Chairman Shaheen.
Here.
Vice Chair Busey.
Here.
Representative Isaac. Here. Representative Morales-Shaw. Representative Plesa. Here. Representative Raymond.
Here.
Representative Swanson.
Here.
Representative Toth.
Here.
Representative Terry Wilson.
Here.
A quorum is present. As a reminder, anyone present wishing to testify before the committee, please register at the kiosk located the hallway behind the hearing rooms. If you require assistance in registering or testifying, please contact the committee staff. They're here to assist you. Committee members, as a reminder, please remember to check out the publicly available comments. These comments are left by the public on each agenda item in our hearings. Comments are open until the end of our hearing and are posted upon adjournment from our hearing. Members, I know this is a very special day at the Capitol. We have a dear friend of ours, Honorable Sylvester Turner, whose life that we are celebrating, and we are praying for his family. He was a distinguished gentleman that was loved by many in this Capitol. He was a state representative, a mayor, and a U.S. congressman, and he's done very many things for the state. So clearly, if you feel led to participate in that remembrance, obviously, please feel free to do that. For members of the public, you might notice that some of the chairs might be empty through our committee hearing, and that's why. And as we go through session, you'll notice from time to time there'll be empty chairs. There'll be members that are laying out pieces of legislation in other committees or attending to other matters. Things get pretty complex and variable as we progress through committee. But know that each bill will get its required hearing and attention that it deserves. So with that, the chair lays out House Bill 640, recognizes Representative Baumgartner to explain the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Shaheen, Vice Chair Busey, and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me the privilege and honor to lay out House Bill 640 today. It's the easiest bill you're going to hear all day. Basically, we're changing one line of code. Oh, sorry, John. Sorry about that. The legislative body has infinite wisdom many moons ago, for whatever reason, on Good Friday, left out a certain piece of institution whenever they were letting school districts be closed for the day. It's when local elections happen, and so your municipalities, your district offices, your county offices all have to stay open for 3 hours in case someone wants to file something. Well, I can tell you that, it's overtime, it's manpower and things like that, and no one ever really files anything that day. And all we're trying to do is allow them to change that one line to political subdivisions so we can right the wrong that was overlooked many moons ago. And I do believe there's witnesses, and I'll turn it over for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgartner. Members, have any questions for Representative? Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
I don't think we're showing any testimony. We do have a resource witness available. Does any member? Guess that would help. We're not showing anybody for testimony. We do have a resource witness available if any member would like to hear from the resource witness.
All right, with that, I close. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 640? If not, the chair or you've closed. Thank you, Mr. Baumgartner. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The bill is left pending. I'm just going to go in this. Oh, he's not here. He has to go somewhere.
I saw Gene in the hall. I think about to go.
Yeah. You ready, Mr. Toth? Chair lays out House Bill 952 and recognizes Representative Toth to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. The Jenny Stevenson Voter Integrity Act is the next necessary step to restore faith in our elections and weed out bad actors that would seek to undermine them with fraudulent use of absentee ballots. It's the #1 source of fraud in elections. Members, HB 952 requires all mail-in ballots to include a unique code allowing each ballot's authenticity to be verified. The ballot has to scan out in order for it to scan in. My bill specifically tasks the Secretary of State with designing and distributing the code in a manner that best protects ballot secrecy. We have met with the Secretary of State's office. This is something they're familiar with, and they're reaching out to vendors in other states where they've implemented it. And I'd like to read directly from the bill. No record associating an individual voter with a ballot code may be created. 52.076B in the bill. Counties across the United States mandate codes similar to what is required by my bill, and there was a bipartisan push in 2022 for a similar measure at the federal level. It was called the the Vote by Mail Tracking Act. This method was used to a great effect last September in Madison, Wisconsin, where 2,000 duplicate absentee ballots were prevented from being counted twice thanks to the ballot tracking code. It was a mistake, and 2,000 ballots were mailed out, duplicates to the same people, but none of them were able to vote twice. In closing, I'd like to emphasize that a committee substitute is forthcoming, and we've received some really valuable information from the Secretary of State's office. And I'm committed to working with each of you to making sure we get this right.
Thank you, Mr. Toth. Members, any questions for Representative Toth? If there are no further questions, we'll proceed to testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chair calls Emily French from Common Cause, Texas. Welcome. We show you registered as Emily French from Common Cause, Texas, and you are against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. First one, no pressure, right?
All right. No, you're fine. Please proceed.
Yes, sir. I'm here to testify in his opposition to HB 952 as written. I understand the intent of the bill, but I am worried about its unintended consequences. Only 3 years ago, more than 27,000 mail ballots in Texas were flagged for rejection, jeopardizing votes cast by Democrats and Republicans alike in counties big and small. Most of those rejections were because voters failed to meet new ID requirements imposed by 2021's SB 1. A 2024 study found that voters of color were more likely to have their ballots rejected than white voters. This legislature clearly did not intend for so many legitimate applications and ballots to be rejected, as evidenced by the fixes that y'all passed in subsequent sessions. However, that ordeal makes me very wary of any bill that creates a new avenue for mail-in ballot rejection, including HB 952. If a county mixes up the order or assignment of these unique codes, which is vague, and I'm looking forward to more detail on that, hopefully, a voter's legitimate ballot could be rejected through no fault of their own with no opportunity for that voter to cure because they didn't do anything wrong with the codes. I'm reassured that the Secretary of State is working on this and that other states have done this successfully. And I would like to see protections for voters built into this bill, including an opportunity to cure, some way to fix something if it goes wrong. Perhaps a pilot program would ensure that eligible voters would not suffer from this new law as it is implemented. I look forward to reading the committee substitute, but as currently written, we oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, any questions? I have a question. Yes, Ms. Plesa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you're with Common Cause,
Yes,
and what is Common Cause?
We're a nonprofit organization. We do democracy work in many states across the U.S., but I am the Texas person.
Okay,
One of the great Texas people.
congratulations, great. So you're saying that SB 1 in your statement, you said that more voters of color had their ballots rejected or more likely to have their ballots rejected than white voters. Why is that?
Yes, ma'am. I will get you. I'll look at that study and get that to you. I don't know why, especially in that instance, but I do know that it disproportionately impacted voters of color.
And we saw a lot of people have their ballots rejected because they, didn't put their ID on there correctly, or it. So are you thinking that there's going to be problems with the implementation of this kind of the same way that code might be damaged or the number might got rubbed off or whatever, and that's what's going to prevent these ballots from being counted? Because I think that actually goes to the opposite of what we're trying to do. We're trying to maintain assurance that every ballot that's going in is being counted, and so that's why I'm a little confused.
Right, and I appreciate that. I absolutely want that. We're all working towards the same goal here. I'm just a little worried because I feel like every time something changes, there's a new opportunity for voters to be disenfranchised. And I'm a little bit worried that this is something the voters wouldn't have any control over, if the wrong code on their ballot is mailed to them, if the county, makes a mistake, which is fine and
If it's
understandable.
damaged, if it's,
Right, exactly.
you can't read it,
Yeah.
then that vote would be discounted,
Right, and I
correct?
think there's definitely a version of this bill that we would absolutely support.
And also, there's no process in this bill to cure ballots, is what you're saying?
Right, with the voter ID issue, the county could contact a voter and they would, oh, here's my driver's license number, good, we're all set to go. If the code is damaged or something happens on the county and the voter's ballot can be rejected and the voter won't have any idea why.
So is that because we're creating a database
I'm
of these
not sure.
voters?
I would defer to the bill author.
Okay, I'll ask. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Ma'am, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Kevin Hale from the Libertarian Party of Texas. Good morning, sir. I show you as Kevin Hale, representing Libertarian Party of Texas, and yourself, and you are for the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, sir. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairman Shaheen, Vice Chair Busey, members of the DAIS. The Libertarian Party of Texas does support Bill 952, which requires the mail-in ballots to include a unique, non-traceable electric code to verify authentic without linking individual voters. This measure aligns with LP Texas principles of election security, transparency, and protecting voter privacy. Enhancing election security, the unique codes prevent unauthorized ballot duplication, protecting the voter privacy, obviously not even creating a way to tie the voter to the ballot is pretty unique. I like that. And of course, promoting the transparency of verifiable elections. So we do support HB 952.
Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you.
Very much. Members, any questions? Yes, Ms. Plaza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you're saying that this actually makes it less traceable, right?
Well, it doesn't trace the voter into the ballot. You get on a unique code, the ballot gets sent to them.
That's the part I'm having an issue with, because if we're creating a unique code, right? A unique code, AZ29B,
Whatever it might be. I got
and
you.
we're putting it on someone's ballot, doesn't that now make that ballot unique? So it's traceable, so that code is tied to that
The
person
way I understand
that
the-
is on the ballot?
Yes, ma'am. But the way I understand the bill is that the voter information isn't going to be tied to that code, that there will not be a database created that ties them both together so that cannot be. It's actually creating a privacy line right there.
Okay, I just feel like if we're putting it on, then it can be tracked to that specific person.
Not if you don't create a database
Are they
that ties
sequential
them.
codes?
I would talk to the bill owner on that
Okay,
one.
thanks,
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you.
Chair calls Dr. Laura Presley from True Texas Elections. Hello, ma'am. We show you as Dr. Laura Presley of True Texas Elections, and you are against the legislation. Is that accurate?
Vehemently against
All right,
this
vehemently
bill.
against the legislation.
sir.
Please proceed. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Laura Presley with True Texas Elections, and our election integrity supporters and advocates across the state do not support this bill. The issue is placing a unique identifier on mail-in ballots has the potential for tying the voter to that unique number. Exactly what you're saying, Representative. And it breaches the ballot secrecy. This bill will enable the consequences of breaching ballot secrecy for mail-in voters. Ballot secrecy was just discovered this last year with in-person voters because of unique identifiers. Voting system vendors came to this committee last summer and said to the committee, there's no way to tie in-person ballots to their voters. The voting system vendors said that to this committee, and that is false. I'm going to hand you, when I'm done, a declaration from our case in federal court on this, where Dr. Daughtery says, yes, an algorithm was created, and we now know how every single person in Williamson County has voted for several years. This is a case in federal court right now. So whatever is going to be told, oh, trust us now. We're going to put a unique identifier on the ballots for mail-in, and trust us now that it's not going to be tied to the voter. Well, I'm saying you lost the trust. You're done. We have vehemently opposed this. I have given Representative Toth some amended language. I love the idea that the ballot board needs to check the numbers to make sure that these were the ballots that were handed out to voters. We support that. We support that change. We've provided amended language. No way on earth will we support putting a unique second number on these ballots when the vendors in this state have already shown they cannot be trusted and that ballot secrecy has already been breached for every single voter in Williamson County, and those same systems are used in over 100 counties in Texas. It's shocking what has happened. And to put this up again for mail-in, we have not learned from mistakes. So we vehemently oppose this, and imagine the power of knowing how people vote. Representative Shaheen, I know that your ballot has been exposed because of how you voted in countywide. Representative Wilson, we know how you vote in Williamson County. And Representative Busey, I can tell you how you voted in the last 4 elections in Williamson. Nobody should know that information. Zero. Imagine if we know it for judges, representatives, CEOs of companies. When you go to the ballot box, it's between you and the Lord, nobody else. And to even consider this is shocking. We don't know where this came from. We understand that we want to check that the ballot board has got the real ballots. There's already a unique number that's put on the ballot, a consecutive number according to law, that is not tied to the voter. It's not tied to some computer voting system. And to create another one to put it on top of this, you can develop software that can read the unique number. There's no reason to develop a new system. And I'm here for questions. And I will hand you this declaration. It's paragraphs 5 and 13 that says, yes, in Williamson County, with an algorithm that we found, God bless the Lord for we found it. We knew this could happen across the state, and we proved it. And we've proved it in court with 2 declarations. Okay, and the committee heard testimony last summer, said, that's not possible. Well, it is, and I'm going to give you a declaration that says it is possible. And I'm here for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Presley. And when you're done, if you can hand that to the assistant to be
Okay.
Handed out. Members, any questions?
Sure, I have a couple questions.
Chairman Wilson?
Yeah, thank you so much. Ma'am, can you tell me, in terms of, you put a lot of information out there
Right.
for you know, to really digest in terms of the security of the ballot. And frankly, you know, at the end of the day, I absolutely agree with you in terms of who should know how I voted.
That's right.
And, but, you know, why would we need a new number?
Yeah, I don't understand it, because there already is a mandated by Texas law, it's a 75-year-old statute that says you have to put a consecutive number on that ballot. And I love the idea of the bill where you have to, you want the ballot board to double check. Let's say the ballot that was mailed out was, you know, ballot number 1500. Well, if the ballot board starts getting numbers at 79,000, well, that might not be right, okay? That's really, the intent of the bill is good. I don't understand why you want to put a second number that's computer generated when the ballot comes in and it's requested and now it's given a number I don't trust. After what I've seen and with my own eyes, the algorithm for all in-person voters now, I don't trust. Trust us now. We'll keep it. This is a very powerful piece of data, and no one should know how we vote. So I don't understand, Representative Wilson, at all why another number has to be put on there. Just what you said, Representative. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate it. You know, I was given, you know, we passed 5180 last
I
session.
know it is, sir.
And while this isn't really about the bill, but it kind of sort of is, when I looked at a redacted,
Yeah,
voting register or tablet ballot here, I see numbers along the lines of individual names.
that's right. That's right.
Can you tell me, is that line to a in-person ballot number?
Well, I don't know what data you're looking at.
Okay.
The algorithm that we found, we have redacted all of that information. We do not want the algorithm out there. We have redacted that in court documents. We've allowed the court to look at it. And this one expert, Walter Daugherty, has seen it, and he provided this declaration and validated, yes, it exists for 100% of in-person voters, not just 1 or 2% of countywide people. There's 2 ballot secrecy issues in the state. Countywide, which is a state, that's an issue, but in-person voters get a unique identifier through a voting system. 100% of people in person, we can tell you how people in those counties vote.
Interesting.
It's shocking. It's in federal court right now. We've been there a year, and we're not going away.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Swanson?
Thank you, Chairman Shaheen. In Williamson County, do they use ES&S?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What particular machine do they use?
What
Or is it
the
all of their
lawsuit, what the lawsuit has
machines?
identified are there's voting system software, the express link of the ES&S voting system, and the express vote activation card printer were not certified federally or by the Secretary of State. And I've got documents, I'm going to give you that too. The examiner says we never looked at it. Those 2 pieces of equipment are what put this unique number, and nobody
We're
looked at the
talking about,
software.
this is something that happens when they check in, the
When they
e-poll books
check
are
in,
doing
the
something.
number's given
And
when
their
they get it.
representative last time did tell us they're trying to get certification. So he talked about what changes they were making. Do you?
That was for poll books. That was not for this.
Okay, so it
totally
has
separate.
nothing to do with this.
Nothing
okay.
to, their poll books were decertified for not being able to check in quick enough.
Okay.
All right, so that's a different topic.
So you're saying any fixes they're talking about wouldn't fix this?
No, ma'am.
This algorithm that we haven't been able to see, keep in mind that Vice Chairman Busey and I think, are the only returning members from last
That's right.
time. Some people have been on the committee before, but they weren't on last time, and so wouldn't have been at the interim hearings and all. So this algorithm that, of course, we can't see because you don't want it out there, which makes sense, can it be done at all on a Hart machine?
That's a great question. And the Hart InterCivic guy, and this is in one of our briefs, a recent brief that was filed in December, the Hart InterCivic guy did say it is possible to triangulate even the Hart system. And that's his testimony. It's in our brief that was filed in December in the court.
So when the Secretary of State's office suggested the elections officials start redacting the information on who voted where, which I always like being able to get that information, and
Right.
I don't even have to have the names. I'd just like to know, okay, 30% of my people are going to that spot and 40 over here. Did that help? Did that do anything
No,
to stop
not for
the
this issue.
algorithm?
This issue is not a location issue. This
Okay.
issue is a unique identifier put on the ballot issue. And that issue is more countywide, a countywide breach, where you have people who vote outside their normal neighborhood area, and they're the only person at that location.
With that ballot style.
That's the countywide issue, and that's an early vote issue, right? Same thing with early vote.
Right.
And we've calculated, and I've done a lot of analysis on this, it's about 2 to 5% of voters who vote election day for countywide, their ballot secrecy is breached. The county and officials have the data. Now, you're trying to make sure the public doesn't have it, but those people still do. So by definition and by design, Election Day countywide breaches ballot secrecy for 2 to 5% of the people. Now, you go to early vote where you can vote anywhere again. That's a state issue because in the state law, it says you can go vote anywhere at any early vote location. That's a state statute. That's about 1% of people who vote early have their ballots breached. So we've got a countywide issue, and now we've got 100% of voters in person issue.
So
by
the
the software.
algorithm doesn't expose everybody's ballot, just this
Say it again?
1% in early voting?
That's right. Countywide and early vote is between a 1 to 5% issue.
Okay, and on election day, it's how high?
It's higher because you have fewer people voting. Early vote, about 70% of people vote early. So it's a
Okay,
larger
so it's easier
database.
to
It's a
pin
larger
people down.
numerator.
So since we can't go judge the algorithm ourselves, when do you think this court case is going to come up? Any idea? I'm
Well,
very curious to hear.
We're at the mercy of the court right now.
Right,
We're just
no idea.
providing all the evidence that we have,
Okay.
and it's not right. It's not right to breach ballot secrecy. It's a constitutional right to have a secret ballot. It's between you and the Lord, and that's it.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Like, most of
Yeah.
the time, everybody knows how I'm voting, but everybody else shouldn't be put in that situation.
Well, Matt Rinaldi wasn't real happy, was he? Yeah, he wasn't.
Well, I do wish we could know more, but I understand you don't want to put the algorithm out there.
We
but
can't.
it
We're not
puts
gonna
us in
do
a
it,
very
yeah.
frustrating situation of what are you suggesting we do to fix it? Since you can't tell us the algorithm, what do you think we should do?
Well, I'll send you the brief, our last brief, which
Okay.
is really a laundry
Okay.
list of what needs to be done.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Okay,
thank
bless
you.
you. And I'll give you all this, the declaration of the expert, and it says, yeah, the algorithm's there, and then the voting system examiner who says we never looked at the Express Link software and the card printer. We never looked at it. We were told not to look at it. It wasn't EAC certified. And then the certification from the Secretary of State says, yeah, the EAC looked at it, and they did not.
So your
Okay.
1% to 5%, are these people in very small precincts, so that makes it easier to identify
No,
them?
you could just, like, you want to go vote where you work, or you go vote where you're at a meeting across town. So it doesn't,
I thought you said the algorithm's not dependent on geography where you vote. Is that,
so there's two issues, the countywide, which is the 1 to 5%,
okay,
and then the software issue with the unique identifier, that's 100% breach.
okay,
Those are two separate things.
okay, all right,
It's
thank you.
confusing, it is.
Mhm, for sure,
right, so I'll
especially since
hand-
we don't know the details.
Yeah, so I'll hand this out. I'll let you do it. Any other questions?
Chairman, I have a quick question.
Let the
you
record
don't-
show Ms. Morales-Shaw is present, and Ms. Morales-Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to know if you were going to provide us a copy of the court case as well?
I will be happy to send that out. I'll be
Okay.
happy to send, the court case is actually, the number is on the declaration for the expert.
Okay, that's
You
fine.
could look
We
it up
can
in
look it
federal
up.
court, we're in the Western District.
Thank you. Thank you
Judge
for your
Ezra,
testimony.
Judge David Ezra.
Members, any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Presley, very much.
Bless y'all, thank you.
Chair calls Terry Putnam, representing himself. Thank you, sir. We show you registered as Terry Putnam, representing yourself, and you are against the legislation.
Yes, I'm Terry Putnam. I live in Georgetown, Texas, and I'm against the legislation as written. And the issue is adding a code which is not transparent. For the last several elections, I have served on the early voting ballot board. As an observer, I can't have any electronic devices to read machine codes. I can only see what I can see and interpret with my eyes. So I can't read a QR code. I cannot read a barcode without some sort of electronic assistance, which is not allowed in the early voting ballot board. Now, the staff can have those devices, but as a poll watcher, I cannot. So, as written, it's non-transparent. Now, if you want to put something, a code in there that is human readable, then I would fully support that sort of thing. But it has to be human readable, because I'm not allowed to take machines in to read them myself. Otherwise, I have no idea what the code is telling any of the other devices that read it to do. So that's my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Members, is there any for the witness? Thank you, sir, very much. The chair calls Cindy Castilla with Texas Eagle Forum.
Thank
Hello,
you.
ma'am. I show you as Cindy Castilla representing Texas Eagle Forum and yourself, and you are for the bill.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. We very much support this bill. I've been an election judge since I was in my 20s and have done a lot of elections. More and more, our biggest problem is people coming in who either asked for a ballot, a mail ballot, and never received it. I had a guy 2 years ago, fly in from Florida to check their mail again, because their ballot hadn't been received. He had to vote provisionally. There's no way to know if somebody stole his ballot and voted it. If somebody did, and you had this number, well, first of all, we don't know. We don't know. If it had the number on it, we could literally pull an illegal ballot. And I think that's critical. People do cheat in elections. It does happen. And voters get really frustrated. This man was not happy. It's not my fault. I have nothing to do with the fact that his ballots may have been stolen out of his mailbox. We also get people who receive ballots that they didn't request. And even having the number on that, if they had not understood that they have to bring it in now because they received one, they need to bring it in order to vote. If they don't understand that, they rip it up, they throw it away. They have a remedy when they vote provisionally because their numbered ballot would never have been voted. We wouldn't mind it having a criminal penalty for somebody revealing a ballot voted by mail's vote. Connected to the person. I think that might be wise because we really should not. And Rep. Swanson, I had a son whose vote is known. He doesn't care. He's proud of his vote. But he went up north. He lived south of Mockingbird, and he went north, far north, where his girlfriend worked to have lunch with her and voted at a location there. So he was the only person from his precinct who voted at that location that day. And that's how they find your ballot. Because they can look in the records and they can see that somebody from precinct 111 voted at this location, only one person did, and they can see who that was. So if they're seeing the actual ballot, they can connect you. So that's how that happened to him.
Could I speak back to that?
Yeah, recognizing Ms. Swanson.
Thank you. I do understand that has happened to people. That's how they could tell Matt Rinaldi's, his ballot style. He voted across the county, that kind of thing. But since I guess we'll have this question for Secretary of State's office, since they've been having everybody redact that and we can't tell where they voted, then that may have fixed that. I guess we need to check with Ms. Adkins to make sure that, see whether we need to put that into law or anything. But I think that fixed that problem.
I think our problem with the redaction is that when you do have to look at an election because there's a challenge or something, then you might not be able to put it together as well with that redaction. And so we do need to be able to audit elections. And so it would really almost be better. The people who have identified these ballots shouldn't share them. You just shouldn't. Nobody should have posted how Matt Rinaldi voted. That was wrong, in my opinion, to post that because he should have.
But we have this
ballots
conflict of interest that we, either redact the stuff to keep the secret ballot, or we put out a lot of information so that people can audit it. And I'm just still listening to the details because I don't know where we should come down on weighing those two issues.
I think mail ballots are more at risk than other ballots for being stolen, and that's where I think applying this. I mean, I really am more just speaking on this bill,
Right, okay.
And I think that applying it to mail ballots is critical. There's nothing worse than a voter who feels like their ballot may have been voted. There's just nothing bigger to discourage them. And we don't ever want to discourage voting. It's our first and most important right. So, except to life. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Ms. Plesa?
Thank you so much for your testimony and for being here today. You're with Texas Eagle Forum.
Yes, ma'am.
What is that? I see that that's from Dallas. I represent parts of Dallas, and I never heard of it, so I'm just trying to educate myself.
We are a national organization, but we have some states that have state leaders. Phyllis Schlafly started the organization in the 70s.
Really?
And she has now passed away. But we work on family issues. We look at, is it constitutional? In Texas, we look at, is it biblical? You know, and so we try to protect families' rights. And a family voting rights are important because they are speaking for who they want to represent them. So that's, you know, generally, and so this is in our lane, although we have a lot of lanes, because a lot of things do connect back to families and their rights.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Ms. Castillo, can you come back up just for a second?
Yes, sir. Sorry.
You just want to get away from that podium, don't you? First of all, members, any other questions? So I think we show you duplicated or you're registered twice. So I think
I was not going to speak on this,
Okay.
and I just decided with the amount of elections I've judged and what I've experienced
that's
with
perfectly fine.
discouraged voters that I came to speak as well.
Can you just work with our assistant there so we can remove the duplicate?
Oh, okay, yeah, I didn't know, I mean, I came and we added it because I didn't know how to.
That's fine.
add
It's
it.
not a
We're
problem. We'll fix it though.
something
If you could just work with her to
It'd be nice if we could revisit our sign-in and change it.
duly noted.
It's not your fault, yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 952? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Toth to close on his bill.
Are you bringing Secretary of State?
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Toth, I'm sorry. Members, we have a resource witness from the Secretary of State's office, if anybody would like to hear from.
I'm sorry.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Chair calls Christina Atkins. I show you as Christina Atkins with Secretary of State's office, and you are testifying on the bill.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Busey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we talk a little bit about, we just heard a lot of testimony about, I guess, ballot security. I know really we're trying to stay on the bill of adding this unique number. I want to help Representative Toth pass this if we're solving a problem. So I'm just trying to understand how this would work, how you envision it work. I know y'all are working on a committee sub.
Yes, sir.
And so can you just talk a little bit about how this would be implemented in a way that could ensure secrecy and privacy of the ballot? And with the numbers we already have, why is this different, and how is what this bill is trying to do different?
So I did have some conversations with the representative, the bill author, and his team about this to get some clarifying information from them. The first thing was with respect to this unique code that has to go on there. One of the things that I spoke to the representative about is that we already have a unique code on a ballot, and that's the information that one of our other witnesses was talking about earlier. Every ballot in Texas has to be numbered consecutively beginning from number 1. So our mail ballots have that numbering requirement already, and that's the provision that's been in law for a very long time. And so when I had discussions with the representative, I asked, if rather than applying a different number, could we use that unique number that's already there to as the basis for creating this check-in, check-out process? And he said that he was amenable to that it made sense to be able to minimize extra information on the ballot. So I think when it talks about a unique code, we can use that existing ballot number that's on there. The other point that I think is important to note is that the bill does say no record associating an individual voter with a code assigned to a ballot under this section may be created. So when we were looking from an implementation standpoint as to how our office would create a numbering system or a barcode system that could be used, we know this is not something we could create in-house, so we definitely reached out to some vendors that have some experience in this area. There are vendors that we can work with because they do something similar in other states where they do have coding that they apply to ballots for this purpose of tracking ballots going in and out. They can work with us to develop something that's specific to Texas. It would be developed in a way that is not tied to any voter registration or voter lists. So they would be creating a series of codes, a series of barcodes, or taking the existing number that's on there and creating coding from those numbers. That coding would then be applied to the ballot so they could check it in and out. When a ballot is being pulled to be mailed to a voter, a blank ballot, they could check and record that unique barcode that's on there or that unique number. And then when the ballot comes back, after it's already gone through the ballot board review process and is being separated from the envelope so you don't see whose ballot it is, then the ballot board, what this bill indicates is the ballot board would then do another check on that barcode that's on there to ensure that it was an actual ballot that was issued by that election office.
I think you just said it. So ultimately, the purpose is to make sure people aren't making duplicate ballots. I mean, is that, and I'll obviously talk to the bill author some more too, but.
That's my understanding, sir, from the communications we had with the bill author.
Are we seeing, what happens if someone sends in someone's ballot and then they show up to vote? Can you talk about that process?
If,
Because we heard like really worried that someone else would send in someone's ballot. So if someone sends in my ballot by mail, but then I show up to vote, what happens?
So if you're a voter that's requested a mail ballot, perhaps you didn't receive it in the mail for whatever reason, you still can go in person to vote. You would notify the polling place worker that you have previously requested a mail ballot. More than likely, when they're checking you in on that poll book device, it would have an indication that you have already requested a mail ballot, you're on that mail ballot list. That poll worker would then be required to do two things. Since you don't have a blank ballot to surrender and give back to them, you would be required to vote provisionally. You would also be required to fill out a cancellation form. It's a separate form. It has affidavits on there where you can indicate the circumstances for why you're voting in person. Either you just chose to instead of voting by mail, or you never received your mail ballot. These are indications that you can provide to the county.
And you cast an official ballot at that point?
You are casting an official ballot, but it's being cast provisionally.
Okay.
And the reason why is because they want to make sure that the mail ballot and the provisional ballot are reconciled. By filling out that provisional ballot and filling out that cancellation paperwork, it's going to ensure that if both ballots were received, that in-person provisional ballot is what's counted.
So the in-person provisional ballot will trump the other ballot?
Yes, sir.
Because you went in person?
That's correct.
So there's not this high risk that your ballot was taken from you and casted against you?
I think that's...
Because you showed up and you were able to verify who you were and that you wanted.
In that circumstance where somebody is coming in and opting to vote in person, that's what that process is designed to do and that paperwork is designed to do, is ensure that the ballot that belongs to that voter for which they've canceled that mail ballot is the one that's designed to prevail if there's a conflict, if both ballots were submitted. That's what the process is designed to do.
Are we having any issues with duplicate ballots? I mean, like people making replica ballots? Have you seen that in the state?
I am not familiar of any specific examples of that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Does somebody over here have a question? Mr. Toth?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's okay if you don't know this. I'm going to throw a zinger at you. Do you know what data points are for an algorithm?
Are you referring to the algorithm that was mentioned earlier?
Algorithms in general. Do you know what a data point is?
I do know a little bit about algorithms.
Can you explain it to us?
So the best way that I can describe an algorithm is there's usually like a series of number points or a series of random numbers that are involved that help you come up with like a sequence. And we use algorithms with risk limiting audits to help us determine how we pull ballots. I don't know, in the context that it's been
Can you
brought
give
up
us some of the
today-
data points that you would use when you do a risk limiting audit for the state of Texas?
Well, for that particular process, there are a couple of things that we do. It's all depending on how your ballots are stored, so we have what we call ballot manifests. But then there is an algorithm that exists that we use.
Can you stop a sec?
Yes.
Can you explain what a risk limiting audit is for the state of Texas?
Of course. A risk limiting audit is an audit that is conducted after the election to validate the outcome of the election. It's based on a mathematical formula, an algorithm, that is used to tell us what ballots need to be reviewed in what locations, so that we're reviewing those ballots to see statistically if they match the outcomes for the state.
What data points do you rely on to do this?
So when we are conducting a risk limiting audit, counties have to provide us information related to what we call their ballot manifest, how their ballots are stored, a list of like the batches they have of ballots.
Right.
We have software that we use to assist us with this. In addition to that, we have to...
Do you score the data points?
No, sir. All of this is put into an application that we use, and then when
But the algorithm scores the data points,
Yes,
doesn't it?
sir. And then we randomly select, there's a point in the process where we actually roll the dice and we select different number points to help get the
Right.
algorithm initiated. So it's randomly generated.
Do you know what do you know what data points were used in Williamson County that helped them identify how these people voted?
No, sir, I do not.
So the Secretary of State's office hasn't identified what's out there already currently?
So what I would say is there are kind of two components to this discussion on ballot secrecy. One is about publicly available information and being able to use publicly available data to tie it back to a voter. The second thing that I have heard in this is with respect to this ongoing litigation, that there is an algorithm out there that can tie a ballot number back to a voter. This information has never been presented to our office. So I do not know what it's about. I do not know how it's being used. If it is something that is related to our electronic voting systems, we have the ability to decertify those systems immediately.
We'd
But
like
I
to work
don't
with you
know.
because we've got to get to the bottom of it, finding out what happened. And there are data, the only way that you can link an election result, a vote to a person is to have data points. If there are
Yes,
no
sir.
data points, you can't do it. And we've
Yes,
got to
sir.
find out what those data points are that enabled this breach.
And I'll tell you from a litigation standpoint, sir, we have requested to view this algorithm, but we have not been permitted to. Those that are involved in the litigation do not want us to see it.
Why?
I don't know, sir. I don't know, sir. I would very much like to know this information because there are some things that we have the ability to do with respect to the certification of voting systems that need poll books, but we have not been permitted to see it, so I cannot take action on it until I know what the issue is.
So have you thought about subpoenaing these records so that we can find out how we can
This is
make our elections more secure?
our representation. Our attorneys from the Attorney General's office have been trying very hard to get us access to this. So this request is being asked in the context of litigation.
It's crazy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Atkins. Ms. Plesa?
Thank you so much for being here, Ms. Atkins. So
Yes, ma'am.
obviously, privacy is a big concern, and I agree with you, Representative. My question is cost related. So is this going to have, I know that it has no fiscal note, but is this going to have like a cost, an extra cost to do any of this stuff to the state or to the counties?
Yes. The answer to that is yes. LBB does request
Because you know I'm a
information.
fiscal conservative.
LBB does request information. There is a cost associated with developing the software, but LBB made the determination that the cost wasn't significant enough to
Okay.
attach a fiscal note to it. So there is some limited cost associated with it, but not significant enough for LBB purposes.
Awesome, and looking forward to see your committee sub, because I definitely want to support you in making sure we're protecting our elections and our privacies.
Members, any other questions? Yes, Ms. Swanson.
Yes, in the interim, there was talk of this committee putting forward a subpoena to try to get this algorithm so we can actually fix things and not wait for the whole court system. I don't know what happened to that. Does this committee have the ability to subpoena that?
I think that would be a question regarding House rules. So that's not something I would probably be able to speak on.
Okay, so again, since we'd all like to make sure that our ballots are secure, but balance that with the privacy issue, explain again for all of us, so we're real clear, how we would keep this bill from causing particular ballots to be connected to particular voters.
So I think it's very important to note that our ballots already have a number on them. This is a very unique requirement to Texas. There are not many other jurisdictions that have ballot numbering requirements. Anytime you put any kind of unique identifier on the ballot, there is always going to be a concern about ballot privacy. And I think that's just a fact. It's how you treat that number, how you protect it, and how you maintain records of that information that'll determine whether or not secrecy is an issue. So the bill right now has language that makes it very clear that that unique identifier shall not be tied back to a voter in any way, which means that number needs to be generated in a way that is not specific to a voter. And that's from an implementation standpoint. When I talked to the representative, one thing I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page about is that should we have to develop software that can provide a QR code or barcode that goes on the ballot that has this number, that it was not being done in a way that's tied to a voter record. And so I think that's the most important thing, is that any number that's on there shouldn't tie back to a voter record. And as long as we don't tie it back to a voter record, and our election workers, our ballot board members, are not retaining and writing down that information and misusing that information, then we should not be able to rely on that to violate ballot secrecy. That being said, I will acknowledge that there were some points that were brought up with some other testimony regarding mail ballots in general, and I think anytime you have low turnout in election or small precincts, anytime we have data that's available, that's out there, and we have a small grouping of ballots or voters, it's always going to make it so that ballot privacy is a little bit more at risk. Just in general, mail ballot voters, when you often have 1 or 2 mail ballot voters per precinct, in some elections, inherently that information is more accessible.
So if we're requiring that ballots be numbered from one sequentially, how does this work that then those ballots, okay, so if somebody's the first person to request a mail ballot, they don't get mail ballot 1, it seems like. Explain that to me.
So what they would have to do is take a range of numbers and assign those to those mail ballots. And so when those mail ballots are printed up, in addition to the ballot style, and all of that information, it would have one of those numbers in that assigned range.
Okay.
So you may say ballots 200 to 300 are going to be reserved for my mail ballot voters. And so those mail ballots that are printed up, because those look different in many cases than your polling place ballots, they will be printed up with a ballot number in that range. And then it is the expectation of the election office, state law requires that you have a ballot registered. Well, you keep track of what ranges are assigned to what group. So you know what ballot numbers went to each polling location, and you know what ballot numbers were used for mail ballot voting. Right now, it's just about those ranges. It's not about capturing the specific number when a ballot's used. But I think this is where the publicly available data and some of that information, that number has been used to tie back to a specific voter.
Ms. Plesa?
Okay, and then that makes me think of something else. So our military and our overseas citizens, how will they be affected? Because my understanding is sometimes isn't that printed out on their own and then they mail it out? So how are we going to?
Those individuals are still assigned a specific ballot as well.
Okay.
They are still assigned a ballot that has a ballot number. That ballot is sent to them. In a best case scenario, it's sent to them through some kind of secure delivery mechanism. This is something that our office has been looking into. Some counties just send PDFs via email, but it is supposed to be, the intention is a ballot that is specific to that voter, and it will have a ballot number that should not be repeated.
Okay, so then through the committee sub, that's not going to have like a printed new thing, a sticker or whatever. We're going to fix it so that those military and those overseas voters will be able to tap into that sequential number that's already going to be provided to them, right?
So that is one of the things the representative and I talked about was how we would affix this barcode on there if it was intended to be like a separate label, or if you could work with your printer to assign, to provide those barcodes and those numbers to the printer so that they were pre-printing that on there. And many vendors can do that. That is something that's doable. So they would be given kind of an authorized range and an authorized listing. All of that would need to be tracked and recorded, of course. And then that information would be provided to that voter. I will say one of the other things Representative Toth and I spoke about was that there are small jurisdictions where they don't have very many mail ballot voters, and maybe putting some exceptions in there so that it's a little bit easier for those smaller jurisdictions to track it. They may not have to use a barcode or QR code if they're retaining that information in another way.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your hard work on this, making sure we have safe, secure elections.
Members, any other questions?
One last one,
Ms.
yes.
Swanson?
So if a mail ballot came in, I've always wondered about this, and it's already been accepted, and so the ballot's been separated from the carrier envelope, and then the person comes in person, how, we wouldn't be able to get that ballot back out?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. If the ballot's already been processed, separated, and counted, then that's correct. And I think many of our counties have, in recent years, since the passage of SB 1 and since the implementation of corrective action, those capabilities, a lot of our counties have shifted the way they're counting. They may be doing a lot of the processing, but holding some of the scanning and counting, because that actually can't happen. The counting process of ballots can't happen till after, in many cases, after early voting has ended.
Okay.
So people are given that opportunity to come in person during early voting. And then it's really a very small window where somebody might be able to come in. Actually, it's really just election day is primarily where that problem is, where somebody could come in, but maybe that ballot's already been processed. But many counties hold all of that to make sure that counting and processing is done after voters.
Do we have anything in law that requires them to hold them long enough to stop that
We have
problem?
provisions in law that restrict when counting can occur, and right now counting can't occur of your mail ballots until, for larger counties, at the end of early voting by personal appearance. For our smaller counties, they can't begin counting until election day. So we already have a very, very short
Okay.
time frame for counting.
Okay, thank you. That helped.
Yes, ma'am.
Members, any other questions? Thank you. Mr. Toast, I'll recognize you to close.
Members, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to remind you that this is about absentee ballots, not in-person voting. And the two examples that you heard from the folks that were against this bill, we're talking about machine voting, in-person voting. This is about absentee ballots. Has nothing to do with that, number one. Number two, at some point, that unique identifier has data points in it. And whoever is involved in this lawsuit needs to tell us what these data points are so that we, as a committee and as a state, can remove those data points so that this can't happen again. So what's a data point? A data point represents a single piece of information. I'm going to give you an example. If a coffee shop wants to determine whether more tea or coffee is sold at lunchtime, each cup sold is a single data point. It's hard to determine meaning from a single data point. A set of data points is generally necessary. The definition of a data point then must include information about the collection of data points, which can then be used to determine a pattern. That's what the algorithm uncovers, a pattern. The coffee shop would need to look at information about many cups of coffee and tea, along with who's buying them at the time of the day. That's how an algorithm works. There are data points currently in our current system with what is being used that enables us to identify these people. This has no data points. It's simply a number that's not connected to anybody. It's a number that says this ballot was sent out and it came back in, and it's not tied to anyone. So one of the issues that Ms. Castilla had was, well, if the ballot was mailed out, we'd want to make sure it didn't get mailed back by the wrong person. And Cindy, unfortunately, this wouldn't protect you from that because the number would not be connected to the person, unfortunately. So if someone stole that mail-in ballot, they could use it fraudulently, unfortunately, because we are not connecting it to anybody. So, do you have any questions that I can help you with?
I do, and
Ms. Morales-Shaw?
My understanding is that, Rep. Toth, is that after we passed SB1, there's 2 signatures, one on the ballot and one on the envelope, and those signatures also have to match what the elections office has as a signature for that voter. So when you say there's no connection, that is the connection, that my understanding.
That has
Can you
nothing to
help
do with
me?
this bill.
Okay.
The
Well, you're
signature has
talking
nothing
about-
to do with the bill.
You're talking about validity and verification, and my understanding is that the signature on the ballot and the signature on the envelope, and I'm not doubting the integrity of your bill, I'm just trying to understand why that's not enough.
Because at the end of the day, you could have a mistake. You could have somebody that fraudulently is duplicating ballots, which we did see that in Georgia. We saw it in Pennsylvania. We also saw it in Philadelphia, where after the 2020 election, we sent attorneys to Philadelphia, and they found out that people had voted fraudulently by absentee ballots.
And did they catch that because the signatures didn't match?
It had nothing to do with that. There was no verification system to make sure that they were sent out, that they scanned out and scanned in.
Okay,
That's the
because my
problem.
understanding was that the ballot board verifies those signatures so that they match what the elections office has on file for that registered voter.
Back in, when we were debating the whole thing about voter ID, it was Rafael and Chia that said the type of voter fraud that has been seen most prevalently in the state of Texas is mail-in ballots. 70% of the prosecutions by the Attorney General for election fraud are mail-in ballots. And Jam Lozano actually offered to be a resource witness for you guys, because down in the valley, mail-in ballots are up for sale, according to him. And he was approached several times by people that wanted to do ballot harvesting through mail. This is something we've got to tackle. But we've got to be careful and judicious and make sure that there are no data points affixed to the number, which we currently have, evidently, or else no one ever could have been able to find out how these people voted.
And can you explain how the outcome of this case will impact this bill or vice versa?
It wouldn't.
They're-
It wouldn't,
they're
because
totally unrelated?
This is different. So they're going to try and prove that an algorithm was used. The Secretary of State's office would like to know simply what data points are connected to it, and we desperately need to know that, right? We can't fix something, but I would like to see us, at the very least, if we can't get this information from them, reverse engineer what they've done. And the way you do that is you start looking at that unique identifier right now that they're currently using, and finding out what data points are connected to it in order for you to run an algorithm. We can do that. We don't need the outcome of that case, and we don't even need to see the algorithm, honestly, to do that.
Thank you for your answer.
Vice Chair Busey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Toth, just so I understand, what you're trying to make sure is that people are not replicating ballots. So
Correct.
This is the official ballot out, official ballot back in.
Not just replicating, but also at the end of the day, if a clerk wants to take a single ballot and run it several times, it has to scan in one time to be counted one time.
Okay. I think my biggest hesitation with, I don't see any hesitation with us wanting to make sure we're not replicating ballots or voting ballots twice. And so that's why I said earlier, I want to try to figure out how to help you on this. I think something that concerns me, especially after the testimony, is what if there was an error made? Can we put in language to cure it? Because I think your current bill, and I know you're working on a committee sub, says that it has to be thrown out.
Yeah,
but
let's say a smudge.
That
Well,
error
we
may
can-
not
no,
have
I'm
been
I'm
made
with you
by
on
the
this.
voter.
So what we had talked about doing was it would be affixed to the ballot. Let's say someone spilled coffee on it while they're in the morning when they were, right? Well, there's got to be a means by which you can show up on election day or early voting and show, look, this is my absentee ballot. I spilled something on this.
And I just think somehow we have the ballot tracker
Right.
System. I think somehow we're going to have to figure out, working with the Secretary of State's office, that if these are going to be thrown out, how can the people be notified through the tracker and then come in and cure it? And I don't know that that's in the language right now, In fact, looking at page 2, I feel like it says to toss
Mr.
it.
Busey, I'd be more than happy to work with you on that.
So I think that's one of the main things that I would like to work with you to get to
You
a
bet.
support on it. Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Ms. Swanson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Toth, I commend you for this bill, and I do want to say that replication of ballots is and has been a big problem around the country. I don't know if it has been in Texas, but as someone who spent 11 days in Wisconsin, in the capital, Madison, Wisconsin, there, Dane County, observing the recount, we came across hundreds, maybe thousands of ballots that had been marked, obviously been printed by the same thing, like they'd been circled in and they were perfect circles, and then one little crescent in the exact same spot did not get filled in. There's no way that that could have happened hundreds, perhaps a few thousand times. This is a big county with a lot of ballots. And they also, for their in-person early voting, they used hand-marked ballots, just like you use for mail balloting. And it was just shocking, some of the things that we saw.
Yeah.
And your bill here would have stopped that. So I appreciate your efforts.
Guys, look, this is to stop bipartisan voter fraud. How's that? Is that a good way of saying it? Because
Yes.
we've seen bipartisan voter fraud down in the valley. We've seen it by Republicans. We've seen it by Democrats down there. When the Senate hearings took place in Georgia on the absentee ballots in the 2020 election, they found two things that were unique. They had a paper specialist that came in, and they took a scan electron microscope, and they looked at an actual ballot that had been mailed out. And the reason they knew it was mailed out was because when you fold a piece of paper, tri-fold it, and you score it, if you look at this underneath the scan electron microscope, you see breaks in the fiber. And you could tell that this was a mailed out ballot. And you can also tell that it was, whether it was printed by ink or if it was printed by toner with a scan electron microscope. And they found ballots, lots of ballots that were counted, that were used with toner cartridge instead of print, and where the paper had never been creased.
We saw that too.
So, yeah, we want to make sure, we want to take everything into account to make sure that our absentee ballots are done fairly. We want to make sure that every vote counts. But we want to also make sure that when someone votes, their vote isn't disenfranchised by someone that's not trying to do the right thing.
Right. Thank you.
Is that a safe way of saying it?
Thank you.
Members, any
And with
questions?
that, I close.
Hold on just one second. Any other questions? Mr. Chetz, before you close, is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 952? Would you like to testify? I would, but I didn't sign up. Do you want to come up here and sign up? You're not
Thank you.
closing yet, Mr. Toth. chair calls Catherine Cano. Ma'am, I show you registered as Catherine Cano. You are representing yourself and you are against the bill?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Please proceed.
My name is Catherine Cano. I'm from Tarrant County, and have been a member of the Tarrant County Ballot Board since 2020. I have worked more than 20 elections since then. I read this bill the other day, and my concern is that a lot of what's proposed in it is that it already exists. So the first part, identifying code for mail-in ballots, saying that each mail ballot must include a unique code, readable by an electronic device. That already exists. Ballots are printed with not only the unique serial number of the ballot, but usually some kind of barcode or QR code that is readable by an optical or digital scanner that contains information identifying that ballot for an election. When ballots are processed, scanned through an electronic reader, the database for that election identifies all the ballots that have been issued for that election. If there is a barcode or QR code that can't be read, or it belongs to a different election, the system, the software that we're relying to process these ballots, will identify that ballot as for the wrong election. We've seen that multiple times. Sometimes it can be like just caused by a simple error where the barcode is smudged or something, printed incorrectly, or damaged. So this doesn't really address anything that is currently causing a problem in elections. I understand that people do want to be sure that all of our ballots are authentic, but I think there may be some misunderstanding about the systems that are already in place that are used to authenticate our ballots. And I think that the only thing that would be substantially different if this bill went into effect is creating a burden on the Secretary of State to create a standardized system. And my concern with that would be that the vendors who create our election software, our machines that process our ballots, what they're using may already be proprietary, right? So we use Hart InterCivic machines in Tarrant County. They include a QR code. That QR code can't be read by a standard QR code reader, right? You pull out your phone, you read it, you can't read it. We don't know what it is, but the vendor has told us that that is information that identifies the ballot as having been issued by those machines for that election. If we then impose a burden on that company to say, well, we have our own, the state of Texas has our own requirement for it, you have to make this additional change, then we're imposing a burden on the company to accommodate elections for the state by essentially duplicating work that they've already done. The other concern I would have about this is that it imposes a requirement that the early voting ballot board will identify the unique code on each ballot and then compare the code on the ballot to the codes recorded by the early voting clerk. So there are multiple types of unique identifiers associated with ballots. One is the ID code on the ballot itself, and the other one is an ID code associated with the carrier envelope in which the ballot is returned. Now, what's recorded by the early voting clerk's office and the number that the ballot board actually works with is the carrier envelope ID number. When the carrier envelope is checked in, right, each voter is issued with a unique carrier envelope code. That code is checked in, and that code identifies that that ballot was returned by that voter. You can't have duplicate numbers that are returned. We have had an election. Only one issue that I can think of since I've been working where a duplicate number was returned, and it had to do with a second ballot being issued to a voter, as they are allowed to do under the law, because the first ballot it did not arrive in time, and they requested a second ballot. And we caught that because the system said, you can't check in this ballot. You can't check in this carrier envelope. The other problem that I would note is that if you're relying on print vendors to issue unique ID codes, that is not a guarantee that those ID codes are actually going to be unique. In Tarrant County, I believe it was last summer, we had an issue with one of our vendors where they printed dozens of ballots using the same ID numbers. So we had dozens of physical ballots with the same unique identifiers, and it was because the list that was sent by the elections office of serial numbers to use for that election was duplicated by the vendor. Rather than using the list. They just chose the one off the top of the list for each precinct and used that for all the ballots in that precinct. So even if you impose a unique identifier requirement, not only are you duplicating what you are actually already have, but you're not actually guaranteeing that it will be unique. Mistakes happen. So I'm opposed to this bill. I think it would impose a burden on our vendors, on the Secretary of State, and on the ballot board, because the ballot board does not generally sit there and compare the numbers of the carrier envelope. That happens in the background during check-in with the election clerk's office. So if you require us to do this, it's going to take a lot more time with us having to go through and verify each number.
Thank you, ma'am.
Chairman.
Members, any questions?
Chairman, yes.
Ms. Morales-Shaw?
How do you, thank you for your service, and how do you currently verify that the ballot that was sent in was cast by the person that was supposed to cast it?
Texas has requirements to identify signature and voter ID number. So the voter signs the carrier envelope and provides one of two types of ID numbers, either some sort of driver's license or identification card number, or a social security number, or both. The law states that if the ID number belongs to the voter, then we presume there's a rebuttable presumption that the signature belongs to the voter. But the signature verification committee's job is actually to review that signature and compare it to the signature in the voter's history and determine that it's reasonable to presume that a signature was made by that voter. If there's a question about whether the signature does not belong to that voter, then it's referred to the committee, the ballot board as a whole, and we review it. We review history, we review voter information that's available to us, and then we take a vote on it. And that is all recorded as part of our logs and is available as public record after the election.
Sounds like the only thing more certain than a signature would be someone's fingerprint.
Actually, that's kind of what I think too. I'm fully expecting us to go to fingerprint voting.
Okay. All right, thank you for your answer.
Yeah.
Ma'am, if you could wait right there.
Sorry.
Members, are there any questions? And ma'am, I just wanted to make sure you're representing yourself.
Yeah,
right?
I'm
And
representing myself.
Not the ballot board or any
No.
other entity. Okay.
The ballot board does not have representation.
Yeah.
This is
okay.
just personal experience.
Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
The chair calls. Yeah. The chair calls Kathy Hagler, representing yourself. Ma'am, I show you registered as Kathy Hagler. You're representing yourself and you're against the bill.
Correct.
And I also showed that you originally registered not to testify, but you would now like to testify.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
That's great. Okay, you may
But
proceed.
what I wanted to say hasn't been said yet.
That's fine.
But I wanted to, just to explain a little bit about the way the ballots are numbered for the ballots that go out by mail. So what will happen is, let's just say we've got precincts 100, 101, 102, 103. We're going to order ballots for them. We have to order pre-printed ballots for the ballot style for precinct 100, for precinct 101. And what would happen is when you send in that order, precinct 100 will say that's ballot number 1 through ballot number 99. For precinct 101, that'll be ballot number 100 through 149. Precinct 102, 150 through 299. So depending on how big the precinct is, you would know if you're going to order 50 or 100 or 200 for that precinct. And that's what I believe Ms. Adkins was referring to when she said there's the range. So we would know by the pre-printed serial number, if it came in and it was, say, 133, we would know that was in the range of 100 to 149, so we would know that was a Precinct 101 voter. So again, now when those the ballots are requested, just because there's a range for that precinct ballot style doesn't mean you put them out in sequential order. You can mix those up so that there's no one who could ever know which serial number was on the ballot for a particular person. So you do have a unique number that's tied to the precinct for the ballot so that we would know that it is a legitimate ballot number. And that's why I think we don't need an additional number, because we have that range to know that this is the precinct number, ballot style. It's within that range for this election. That's all I needed to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, are there any other questions? Thank you very much, ma'am. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 952? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Toth to close on his bill.
Couple things. A precinct number is a data point. What she just described is a data point. And we don't want data points in this if you don't want to identify who the voter is. Number one. Number two, this is going directly onto the ballot. It's not going onto the envelope like they're talking about with Tarrant County. So it's going directly onto the ballot. But again, we want it free of data points. If it's free of data points, you can't identify the voter. And I'm certain that we can come up with something with the Secretary of State's office as well, Mr. Busey, something that we can make sure that in the event that there's a smudge code or something, that there's a cure. Absolutely, we'll work with you on that. So with that, I close.
Thank you, Mr. Toth. There's no objection. The bill will be left pending. Is there objection to hear? The chair hears none. The bill is left pending. Chair lays out House Bill 677 and recognizes Representative Diallo to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair Busey, members, for this opportunity to lay out House Bill 677 having to do with election administrators. Just looking at this committee from here, this is the committee where, as a freshman, I got my feet wet. So I feel like I spent more time here in conversations with Christina Adkins than I did with my wife of 33 years that session. But having said that, we hear this a lot. This is a simple bill. This one really is. This has to do with, under current law, county election administrators are prohibited from being a candidate for public office, holding a public office, holding an office or position within a political party, or they cannot make political contributions or political expenditures or support or oppose a candidate for public office. What 677 does is address a concern that really came to our attention last session. That is, currently, an election administrator still may be appointed to an office or position by an elected official, creating potential conflicts of interest. And that's what we want to do. We want perception and the realities of our election administrators not to be perceived as having conflicts. This closes that loop, tightens that law. I think it's what's the intent of the initial drafters. That's what this bill does. I would love to have this committee's support, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, sir. Members, any questions? Thank you, sir. We'll recognize your right to close, and we'll go
Yes.
to testimony. What? No, I recognize his right to close. The chair calls Dr. Laura Presley from True Texas Elections. Hello, ma'am. We show you registered as Dr. Laura Presley from True Texas Elections, and you are in support of the legislation.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Laura Presley with True Texas Elections, and we do support these changes. We think they're really important. Right now, our election administrators, as we sit here today, have access to how voters vote. There is no question in this moment. Voters, countywide voters, we have, in Williamson County, we have in-person voters that the election administrators have access to how people vote. We do not want them involved in political activities. I think one of the things, also they can't take positions on measures. So I fully support the limitations of election administrators because today, as we sit here, they have access to how voters vote. Any questions?
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Raymond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that testimony. You know, we have an elections administrator, and apparently they pay attention because we had our hearing last week, Mr. Chairman, and I said something or mentioned something about it, and it got back to me pretty quickly, you know, from folks with the county, because the county hires them. But, you know, and I like the guy. He's a great guy. Great guy. I love him. He's the best. I don't know about that, but I think, you know, one of the concerns that has been raised for me many times by many people is the involvement in other campaigns, period. That's just not good. I mean, if you're running the election,
That's right.
you're the elections administrator, I mean, I'm sorry, but you're going to give up some things, and part of what you're going to give up is you can't go get involved in campaigns. I mean, we want people to feel good about the process. We want people to feel like, you know, that it's not tilted or weighted in one way or the other. And so I appreciate just, you know, bringing some attention to this, and I hope my elections administrator and others around the state understand how important it is that they are neutral, that they don't go opine about candidates that are running when they're having those elections.
Or measures.
Or
propositions.
Absolutely.
Or whatever.
Anything.
Exactly.
So I just, you know, thank you for bringing, and of course, Representative, one of the best here. Wish you were still here on this committee. But it's a very serious thing, and so I appreciate just bringing some attention to it.
Thank you. And I just, you know, I want to reiterate that the countywide and early voting system where you can vote anywhere, the elections administrators, regardless of redactions to the public, we can keep the public from being able to audit the elections and knowing how voters vote. But you've got election officers, the elections administrator, other people in the elections office who can determine how people vote. And we want the election administrators to be restricted on any political activities.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you
Members,
so
any
much.
questions?
Thank you.
Members, any desire for a resource witness? Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 677? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Diallo to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I ask for favorable consideration of House Bill 677, and with that, I close.
Thank you, Representative. Is there no objection? The bill will be left pending. Is there objection? The chair has none. The bill is left pending. Chair lays out House Bill 496 and recognizes Representative Swanson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Shaheen and fellow members. As I mentioned earlier, in late November of 2020, I served as a volunteer observer for the recount effort in the capital city of Madison, Wisconsin, in Dane County. I saw thousands of paper ballots with some contests left blank. Many ballots had a vote for president, but no other votes. Others, surprisingly, voted down ballot but left president blank. The poor security over their massive number of paper ballots was shocking. Many people had had 2 months of relatively easy access to fraudulently fill in votes on the thousands and thousands of undervotes. Because don't forget, those mail ballots can come in very, very early and they're vulnerable for a very long time. I found that when a voter decides not to vote in a contest, they have no option but to leave the space blank. When abstaining in person on an election machine, the machine prints the ballot with a clear distinction that the voter chose not to vote in that particular race. However, on a mail-in ballot, there is no such distinction. As a result, a voter can mail off their ballot with a race for president, state representative, councilman, etc. left blank, intending not to vote either way, only for a bad actor or corrupt election official to take advantage of the empty space and fill in a fraudulent vote for a candidate. By giving voters no choice but to leave a space blank, it can be impossible to tell if the voter intentionally marked the ballot or if someone else made the selection after the voter mailed the ballot in. House Bill 496 attempts to solve that problem by requiring all ballots to have a selection for each contest that states none of the above. Thus, a voter who does not want to show support for either candidate can affirmatively select to abstain, but still mark the ballot in a way where a ballot harvester, corrupt election official, or other bad actors cannot take advantage of a blank contest. The ballot option to abstain is intended to make the most significant difference in stopping fraud when it comes to mail-in ballots, as in-person election machines can already record an abstention. However, the legislation would apply to all ballots regardless of whether they were in person or mailed in, because the law requires that all voters be treated the same. But keep in mind, on our machines, there's only one line on the actual ballot for each race. So no, this would not make the ballots as they came out of the machine any shorter or any longer. So this bill was reported favorably out of this committee last session as House Bill 153. House Bill 496 is a common sense change to ensure that a voter's intent on a ballot is properly recorded and to prevent a harvester or corrupt election official from subverting the will of a voter by taking advantage of undervotes and illegally voting in those races. One thing I do want to mention is it does allow in the bill that it would not count as a person. So the votes for none of the above could not cause a runoff or cause us to have no one elected. No, we cannot elect none of the above. It is not possible. I want to mention we are discussing with the Secretary of State's office whether we need to do a committee sub on a small thing having to do with measures voted on as opposed to just people. So that may or may not be coming. We're in discussion with them. I want to thank Chair Shaheen and members of the committee. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have and respectfully request time to close.
Absolutely. Members, any questions?
Chairman.
Mr. Raymond?
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to ask a couple of things, and I will in a minute, but then at the very end, you reminded me of something, and that is, so for example, in our primaries, and I think you would have to add something to this bill as I read it. So if you have 3 people running, let's say for, in your case, state representative in your district, the way the law is written is you have to receive 50 plus 1% of the total votes cast.
The bill does allow for that issue, that this would not count as,
So if
would not cause a
if you
problem.
had, in the hypothetical, if you had 500 people, what we now call, I think, undervote, right? Like right now, they skip your race.
This
So,
would count
but-
the same as an undervote.
Well, and what I'm
leaving
not
it
clear,
blank.
and the Secretary of State may have to resource witness on this, or Chairman, you may know, but, or Vice Chair, someone may know. The undervotes, is that counted as a vote cast? Because they vote in the governor's race, let's say, and they vote in the lieutenant governor's race, but then they skip the state rep race. So 500 of them in a precinct or in a county, a smaller county, whatever. 500 people undervote and skip the state rep race, which happens, right? Are those 500 votes counted toward votes cast? They're not right now, right? However, so are we going to make it clear that if your bill were to pass, become law, and there's now another, you will see that the voter did vote in the state rep race. They voted none of the above. So are those 500 votes going to be part of the total votes cast in that race? And if they are, it's very important, because if they are, it could cause a runoff, right? Unnecessarily, if you will.
I do appreciate that. That's very important that we cover that, and we did anticipate that problem and have allowed for that. So it would count just as not being
Well, I'm going
cast.
to, if you don't mind,
Absolutely,
in a minute,
yes.
if you don't mind, we'll have Secretary of State. But I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you said in your opening, and I apologize, are there other states that have done this already?
That I would have to get back to you on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm not, by the way.
I
you-
believe there are, but I can get you the
Did-
information.
So it passed out of committee, we didn't take it up on the floor? Because I don't remember this last time. Did it get to the floor?
This may have been one of the 2 that Vice Chairman Busey killed on a point of order.
Oh. So, all right, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase the question. Did we get a chance to vote on it on the floor?
No, sir, you did
Okay.
not.
Well, that's what points of order are for. Yeah, to keep us in order, right? Point of order, keep us in
I'm
order.
sure he's very repentant now.
Well, I mean, I had never even thought about this. I'm gonna tell you something. I hadn't thought about this issue, but we have a lot of undervotes. We do have people that just will skip a race because they just, it really, my experience is it really is none of the above. Not always, but many times you'll talk to people, I don't like any of these guys, I don't like any of them. And so, to your point, of course, about not tempting someone to fill in one of those empty boxes, because where I grew up, they used to, right? That's what used to happen. That's what used to happen. I could tell you some stories I won't say on the mic. Anyway, that's all I've got for you right now, but maybe with a resource.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Swanson, and we'll proceed to testimony. Do you want me to wait till the end for the resource witness so that, because you might have, yeah, we have 5. Sure, absolutely. Chair recognizes Christina Atkins from the Secretary of State's office. Ma'am, we show you registered as Christina Atkins from the Secretary of State's office, and you're testifying on the bill.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, Mr. Raymond.
Thanks, Chairman. So you heard my question. Do you know?
Yes, sir.
Because apparently we took it up 2 years ago. So do you know if I'll keep it to a state rep race, if, let's say, 300 people, this were to become law, they mark none of the above, is that 300 part of that you got to get 50% of all the votes cast?
Great question, sir, and I think Representative Swanson has addressed that in this bill. She has a provision here that says if somebody casts a...
Tell me where you're looking.
Yes, sir, I'm looking on, it's line 12, subsection B.
Okay.
A vote under this section does not count for the purposes of determining which candidate received a majority of votes.
Okay, so that covers it.
Yes, sir,
Okay.
so that means that you're not calculating
I
those when
think
you're
that's
determining
important.
the majority.
I mean, I don't know. I think it's important. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Vice Chair Busey?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Raymond, because that was one of my questions also. The other question I have is, and Representative Swanson said it will not add to the paper, so can you verify, like, by putting a no vote versus a blank vote, we're not adding to more printing, more paper? We've heard about the paper shortages in the past. Want to make sure we're not creating a new side problem with
Sure.
this.
I have, talked to a number of counties about this. Nobody has reported to us that they think this is going to drastically increase their ballot.
Why would it increase it at all? Because she was saying, Representative was saying it's the same line, it just would be like
It's just adding
HD 136 blank.
It's just,
And now
all
it'll
it is
say no
adding
vote.
another selection, like another candidate selection, and that's not, that doesn't take up, or not candidate selection, but another, it's right there along with those candidate selections.
So right now, when we print the ballot, and we've all done this, and I just can't remember, if it was left blank, it still takes the line for HD
It
136.
says no selection.
It would say no selection.
So you're saying it won't add, it should not add to paper, is what you're saying?
Oh, yes, with respect, yes, I'm sorry, and I wasn't understanding. That's correct. As far as the way our voting devices work,
Yeah.
when you're voting in person, I don't.
It's gonna be the
this is
same
not-
link, so it won't change, just try having a cycle where
That's
we don't know
correct.
how long
Yes,
it's
sir,
gonna
it would
be.
not increase any space on that ballot.
And it's not gonna be required, right? So people can just choose to still undervote it?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Members, any other questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Chair calls Kevin Hale from the Libertarian Party of Texas and self. Sir, that's perfectly fine. We see you registered as Kevin Hale, representing the Libertarian Party of Texas, and yourself, and you are testifying for the bill.
Correct.
Welcome, sir. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. First, I want to address all of you as fellow candidates. We have a problem. Our problem is our number one opponent is apathy. Just in my congressional race alone, there are 594,000 voting age people in that district, Congressional District 32. Only 233,000 voted. That does include the undervote in Dallas County, by the way. That's 39.22% of the people that are actually voting. If we have more than 60% of the people not voting, do we really have the consent of the governed? Libertarian Party of Texas is in strong support of this bill, which introduces none of the above. an option on Texas ballots for candidate races and ballot measures. This bill is a vital step towards restoring true voter choice, enhancing electoral accountability, and giving voice to citizens who are not represented by the options given to them. None of the above is a core libertarian principle. LP Texas believes in the concept of none of the above so strongly that it is enshrined in our bylaws, requiring a NOTA option on every internal party election. We believe Texas deserves the same right in public elections to express when none of the candidates or proposals meets their standards. Giving voice to the discontented voters. HB 4096 allows voters who do not support any of the candidates on the ballot proposition to make their views known clearly and constructively. Rather than forcing disengagement of the undervotes, this bill ensures those voices are recorded and recognizes the democratic process. Encouraging further reform to make NOTA count. While we support HB 496 as filed, we believe the bill should go further. We commend Representative Swanson for filing this similar legislation in the previous session that included language that would have counted NOTA. And we would love to see that provision reintroduced. Ensuring NOTA is not merely symbolic, but carries a real electoral consequence. And I will address the fear of runoff. If you want to avoid the cost of a runoff election, I suggest that we used ranked choice voting. If in a NOTA race, if ranked choice voting and a NOTA wins, you definitely need a new slate of candidates. We do this all the time in our party. Oftentimes, we only have one candidate for a race, but they still have to face NOTA. And we've had several candidates that were either too far right for us or too far left for us, and we ended up having no candidate to place on the ballot because we decided they were not libertarian enough or they were not good enough. And we would love to have this for all of the voters across Texas. And if you want to avoid the problem with the runoffs, then you use ranked choice voting, and if NOTA wins, then you just call a special election. Thank you very much.
Mr. Raymond?
Thank you. Say me that again.
My name is Kevin Hale, Legislative Coordinator for the Libertarian Party of Texas.
Kevin Hale.
My second session.
Thank you, thank you. So I appreciate some of the things you're saying, but I'm trying to understand, number one, would you support a law that says you have to go vote?
No.
Okay, so you support the status quo that you don't have to go vote?
You don't have to go vote. I would
Okay.
hope that they would, but
if they don't,
yeah.
so, do you think maybe we should make the filing period longer? Because you say, what I'm hearing you say is, hey, there may be 2 or 3 candidates and, we don't like them. We don't like any of them. So that's part of why you want this, because it says none of the above. And then you want it, what you're advocating is that our laws should be ranked choice voting, and so that maybe nobody wins, and then you got to have another election.
Only if NOTA wins. What happens in ranked choice voting, very rarely does NOTA win in a ranked choice voting. Believe me, in the Libertarian Party, we do this all the time. We use approval voting, but very rarely does NOTA actually win the approval voting. So,
okay, well, but why? I guess I'm missing. Well, you can't make people. I always say on the floor when we run into some hard issues and people are, oh, I don't know how I'm gonna vote on this. This is so hard or whatever. And I'll say from the microphone, members, folks send us up here not just to work on the easy stuff. They send us up here to work on the hard stuff. But if you don't like any of the candidates, why don't you run? Well, I think it sounds to me like you probably have. Right, but to say, hey, if we don't like any of those and you do another election, well, that could go on forever, and we never fill the. It doesn't make sense to me.
And that's a problem of not having good enough candidates, right?
Well,
is that we can't get the electorate to
What is that?
To agree.
But that's where you're losing me, because it's Abraham Lincoln said the government they get is never much better or worse than the people deserve. So the people have decided, because all of us up here you know, we strapped it up, and we went and filed, and we ran. We wanted to make a difference, and we probably all had to run against someone. I know I did. And so, I mean, the Libertarian Party, if you're going to complain that we're not this or enough that, then go put up your candidates, man.
Well,
but don't
that's
say,
what we're saying. No, we're not saying against your candidates. We're saying candidates that apply to be our nominee, if they were too far right or too far left. I think maybe you misunderstood me there. Candidates that apply to be libertarian candidates.
Yeah.
If we find, for instance, in Congressional District 32 in the previous election, we had a candidate that was kind of pro-war, and we are anti-war.
But candidates
so
for
we
your
noted
party?
him.
For your party?
Yes, we are an anti-war party. So he was a candidate that was in favor of us taking our fights to them before they come over here, and he lost because that's not our position. Our position is non-interventionist.
Wait a minute, he lost what?
He lost his nomination to be our candidate because NOTA won.
And then you didn't.
We did not have a candidate in 32 against Colin Allred.
So you want us to, but that's the model you would like for us to use for other primaries, like Democratic or Republican primaries?
If you would use ranked choice voting, the likelihood of NOTA actually winning that race is very, very low.
Yeah, but if NOTA wins, you got to have another election.
You just have a special election.
Well, that doesn't make.
But ranked choice voting gets rid of your the runoff elections.
But dude, you know what? They could have filed. So I'm asking, should we make the filing period longer?
Oh yeah, I would love that.
Well, you have like a whole year right now.
We have a
recruit
60-day window.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
To nominate.
Hold on a second. You have like a whole year to go find somebody to run when the filing begins, which is a month, basically, right?
Yeah.
But you got like a whole year to go try to find them.
We're doing that all the time, sir.
Then
we're the Libertarian Party of Texas. We're always looking for candidates.
But
so if you know somebody that's more libertarian, please send them our way.
This is an interesting dialogue, but we probably need to go back on the legislation at hand.
You know.
Well, anyway, so let's stick to the bottom line is you're for this.
Yes.
I was just curious.
As it is right now, we would love in the future if we would actually count the NOTA vote. In my race in particular, that would have been 3% of the race. I unfortunately only earned 2.6% of the race, so I would have lost to NOTA. The other two candidates, however, were fine, but it does send a message to the other two candidates as well that they were not good enough to earn those votes either, and I think that's a message that the voters really would like to say. Like when I started, 60% of the voting age people are not even participating, sir.
Hey, I'm with you on that, but it's a free country, man. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to get them out there.
Members, any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate the back and forth.
You bet. Chair calls Dr. Laura Presley with True Texas Elections. Ma'am, I show you as Dr. Laura Presley, True Texas Elections, and you are for the bill.
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Yes, Representative Swanson, love the bill, love it. And I think the intention is for a paper ballot. This does not affect any voting system ballot, correct? Is that, okay. My question is just a
Can I just answer that?
Sure.
The law requires that all ballots be treated the same. So even though it's not really needed on a machine ballot because it will print out no selection, it will be on there because we legally have to treat both ballots the same.
Yeah, it's equal protection.
R-
The 14th
right.
Amendment of the
Right.
Constitution, which we love. So
Yes.
equal protection,
Yes.
yeah. So I have a practical question, and this has to do with the tabulations. Not so much does it count against you as a candidate or whatever, but tabulations when it comes out in the voting, the election summary reports that come out of the central counting station. Would you imagine, and this may be a question for the Secretary of State's Elections Division, that you would have for each candidate a slot? Like now it says undervote, but would you have maybe undervote and none of the above? It's a practical question, and it's not addressed here because right now in the law, the undervote has to be tabulated, and if you don't pick none of the above and you've chosen not to vote in that race, then it seems like that would be an undervote. And then the next category up would be how many people voted for the none of the above. This is just a
That's
practical.
what I would anticipate, that it will show
we
up as
may-
a separate number, but we can ask
Right,
the
but the
secretary.
undervote would
Ma'am,
still
are you-
happen.
I just want to make sure, you should be giving testimony, right?
Oh,
That-
but
That's
I'm
right.
asking questions.
Yeah. I
Yes, sir.
probably- So
So this is
I
these are my
apologize.
questions.
No.
Yes, sir. Okay, I'm
You're-
sorry.
I'm sure the bill author will make herself available.
Yes, sir.
for you.
Yes, sir. All right. So those are my questions.
Is that your testimony, though?
Yes, I just want to clarify.
Okay.
In the reporting at the central counting station and on reports, that today, the Texas election code requires that undervotes are reported. And so if you do not choose a candidate and you do not choose this none of the above, then the undervote will still be reported, and there will be an extra reporting of none of the above on that report. And those are my concerns, and I would like to address, you guys to address that in the future or on a.
Ms. Swanson is a
substitute.
very available member.
I know, I love her. I love her.
Members, any other questions for the witness? Thank you, ma'am, so much.
Bless you. Thank you.
Bless you. Chair calls Elizabeth Miller, representing herself. Hello, ma'am. We show you registered as Elizabeth Miller, representing yourself, and you are for the bill.
I am.
Right.
I
Please
wanted
proceed.
to take the opportunity to thank you, Representative Swanson, for this bill. I do love it. And I don't get to come down here. I spend a lot of time at the Capitol, but I don't get to say that very often. I really like your bill. I think it's an excellent opportunity to reflect the will of the voter. And I understand everyone's concerns. I think they're all addressed in the text of the bill. I know I'm not your lawyer and I'm not giving legal advice, but I happen to be one. And it's really clear it doesn't count in the majority, so y'all don't need to worry about that. I think it will. I happen to do ballot board stuff in Tarrant County too. Just enough to know that I don't know everything, but have a deeper appreciation of the day-to-day aspects of it. I think it's been really helpful to do that. And I'm so glad that Ms. Cano came today. And we have made it a mission, talking some of us, Democrats, Republicans, and yes, even we Libertarians participate in Tarrant County. And we hope people will do it in other counties too. We're like utility outfielders in that room. You know, if somebody needs to go to a doctor's appointment, you can continue on with two parties because we work with anybody. But we have some valuable insight on some of these bills that y'all have talked about today and will be talking about. And I hope to not be in here saying I love your bill or hate your bill any more than this, but this one's a little different, you know. But rather just put all you guys in contact with CAD and other people, like other day-to-day ballot board nerds. Sorry, I mean that in the best way, y'all. You know, who can actually answer your questions. What will this look like? Republicans, Democrats, and Libertarians. Y'all can just have like a hotline of, you know, is this doing what I mean for it to do? So thank you for hearing her out and me out. And thank you for this bill. Whatever I can do to help it, even if that means not talking about it.
Thank you for your,
happy
thank you
to
for your
do that.
testimony. Is there any questions from members? Thank you, ma'am, so much.
Thank you.
Chair calls Kathy Hagler, representing herself. Hello, ma'am. I show you registered as Kathy Hagler, representing yourself, and you are for the bill.
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
All
thank
right,
you.
welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you, and she stole my thunder. I love this bill. It's one of my favorites. So I would like to make note that I was also in Wisconsin with Representative Swanson. We were called the Texas Eight. That's what they were calling our group. And sometimes I intentionally skip a race. And we were talking about equal protection if you're working on a machine. Well, let me tell you what happens when you're on a machine if you do a hand-marked paper ballot. You go to a machine, you skip a race, and before you go to the next page, it says, you skipped a race. Do you want to skip? And you go, yes. Are you sure? Yes. Then you get to another page. Then you start voting along. You skipped another race. Are you sure that you want to skip the race? I mean, I'm being sarcastic, but every time you did it intentionally, you have to tell the machine, yes, I'm sure I did it on purpose. Then, when you get to the end of the thing and you're going through your summary, you intentionally skip this, this, and this. Is that correct? Yes. Are you sure? And I get really tired of a machine questioning my judgment. I actually know what I'm doing when I go to vote on a machine. So yes, I really don't think it's just equal protection, but to save those of us who have to go to the machine that prints and keeps asking us over and over, if I have the option to choose none of the above, I think that'll stop asking me questions. So I think this is a wonderful thing for people who use that type of equipment where you use the printer. And then Representative Swanson has already said the thing about for those who use the hand-marked ballots or those who come in and mail ballots, if part of the ballot is marked and part of it is not, it just leaves it wide open for fraud for somebody to just stick a couple of little dots on there as it's going through. And that could happen anywhere between the ballot board and central count. There's several places where someone who didn't have the best intentions could make an extra couple of little dots on those empty ballots. So if it said none of the above, that would take that option away. And then I also wanted to say there was once upon a time, a long time ago, I had to vote in a special election, and I absolutely detested both of the candidates. So I could have stayed home, but it would have messed up my perfect voting record because, as you might guess, I have a 100% attendance on my voting record. So I went and intentionally signed in, didn't cast any vote, and I put it in the can. Back then, you dropped them in the can. These days, if you try to put it in the scanner, it would probably spit it back out at me saying that there's no vote. So if I have none of the above, I now have a way to say I'm a protest voter. And there's a lot of people, I believe, would agree with me that if you want to make a protest vote, this is a delightful option for us. And that ends my testimony.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, any questions? Thank you so much for coming up. Chair recognizes Ms. Cindy Castilla with Texas Eagle Forum and yourself. Ma'am, I show you registered as Cindy Castilla with Texas Eagle Forum and yourself, and you are for the bill.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Proceed.
Okay. Number one, ditto Miss Kathy Hagler. But number two, just to reiterate, we want voting to be easy or for the people who actually come to vote. And it also can be confusing when they keep getting the screen. As far as election work, it goes faster if they don't have to get the screen again and again. You're making your decision right there at the moment you're on that race. I actually had a very, very long ballot once. I was choosing not to vote on a race, but it popped up and I'm like, oh, is that the one? That I chose not to vote. In order to make sure, I had to go outside I had to take my ballot out and go look on the gigantic yellow sample ballot to be sure, that matched up with what I was meaning to do, because it's not often clear when it pops back up which race they're talking about. This will make voting go faster. That's a nice thing. I think paper ballots are the best way to make voting fast, but this is a good option even on the machines. So we don't mind at all that it's on the machines. Thank you and I just appreciate this committee. You guys ask really good questions. And so I know you're thinking really deeply on this, and this is such an important right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, any questions? All right, thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 496? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Swanson to close. Oh, did you have a question?
Just first one.
Oh, okay. The chair recognizes Representative Swanson to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. I do want to say that I appreciate the support from the Libertarian Party, but this bill does not have anything to do with his wish and hope for ranked choice voting. I want to make that very clear, okay? Also, I did hear some interesting things that that I hadn't really thought about. In the machines, like, again, when it comes up no selection, I end up going, gee, I meant to leave several of them blank, but do I need to check again? Whereas this would assure me I made that decision, and I, again, as somebody said, I would be faster in the ballot booth and more confident that I hadn't left off one that I did intend to vote for. So also, I think people may make protest votes, but I think that undervoting usually is someone saying, I don't know anything about that race. So I think we need a spot for that. This was not aimed at being any certain motivation. It's for anyone who does not want to vote in any particular race. So I think it would make voters feel more comfortable that their mail ballot is safe. And again, it sounds like it would be very helpful even on the machines. So as I mentioned, I may have a committee sub. We're in conference with Ms. Adkins over here about that, and if so, we'll get that done. But I think this would solve a lot of problems, and I respectfully request a favorable recommendation from the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson. Vice Chair Busey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Swanson, thank you for addressing. I came in with 3 concerns, and one Representative Raymond really brought up, and that's been addressed. I think the other one was the printing of the paper for in-person. My final one, and we talked offline, I just want to bring it up, is when we're doing, and I think it's at the heart of your bill, is to address ballot by mail. I'm a little worried about how this is going to make the ballots much heavier when it comes to the postage process. So I think if we can think about the return and postage costs and make sure that there's no mistakes along the way there, that ballots get thrown out because people don't do the right postage. I'm thinking specifically of your county, Harris County, with hundreds of lines potentially added to the mail ballot, if I understand it correctly. So I just want to make sure that we're bringing that front and center as we think through a potential committee sub or how to address that. But that's really all that
I do appreciate that. I don't think it would add that much weight, but we will definitely bring that up with the Secretary of State's office.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Raymond?
Thank you, Chairman. Real quick, so just to be clear, so your bill would require ranked choice voting, is that right? Is that, I just want
Thank you for that very thoughtful question, but it would not. Has nothing to do with ranked choice voting.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond, very much.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? There's no objection. The bill will be left pending. Is there objection? The chair hears none. The bill is left pending. All right, hold on, Mr. You want to do 657? Chair lays out House Bill 657 and recognizes Vice Chair Busey to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our committee members and everyone in the room that loved that last bill. We've got some good ones for you coming up. Members, thank you for allowing me the privilege to lay out House Bill 657. This bill would require counties to use the domain of .gov or .texas.gov for a website used to post any election information. The state of Texas requires counties to provide certain election information to the public. These requirements are to ensure that election information is easily accessible and readily available. However, there is no specification on the top-level domain that should be used in the county's website. This uncertainty can lead to confusion among the public and make it difficult to differentiate official websites from unofficial and potentially harmful websites. This bill would help to ensure that voters can trust the information they find online and know that it comes from a reliable source, suppressing the concern of cybersecurity and website spoofing. I want to thank you all for hearing this bill. I'm happy to answer any questions and request the right to close.
Thank you, Vice Chair Busey. Mr. Toth.
What, I'm sorry, but can you explain more closely what this does other than ranked choice voting?
I have a bill for that too, though. We can.
No, I'm being serious.
Yeah, we just want like. If
I mean, not about the ranked choice voting.
So like for Williamson County, it would be like .texas.gov or .gov, just so you know that you are going to an official state, government-sanctioned website. So to find information about where to vote, how voting is, and stuff like that. I think some people, a lot of parties put out information. They make their own pages about information. A lot of it's good intention. We just want to make sure that there's no accidental mistakes on a good intention website or spoofing, intentionally trying to replicate a government website. So if we pass this into law, we would know that if you go to a .texas.gov or a .gov, the reason we have two, I'll give you an example. Williamson County, Tennessee already has that one, so that's why we have the .texas. There's other overlaps like that. So we have the two choices, but it's just to make sure people know that they are on the official website in case somebody out there is being a bad actor or just honestly trying to help through their own webpage that they could make, but maybe they got a mistake on there.
Members, any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Raymond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I like where you're going. I like where you're going. but I think in today's world, maybe you would consider committee sub that like texas.doge.gov. That, I think that would give even more confidence to people that.
Sounds like a good floor amendment.
Okay.
Apparently, we're at the Improv and not the Elections Committee. Any other questions? With no, is there anyone who wishes to testify on, for, against House Bill 657? Oh, we do have witnesses. I'm sorry. Chair calls Kevin Hale, Libertarian Party of Texas, and self. Hello, sir. I show you registered as Kevin Hale with the Libertarian Party of Texas and self, and you are registered for the bill.
Correct.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much once again, Chair Shaheen.
Yes, sir.
Supporting security and transparency in election information, the Libertarian Party of Texas supports House Bill 657, of course, which requires the domain uses of .gov and .texas.gov. We like this because it enhances transparency and public confidence. It promotes election security, and it limits governmental reach because it focuses respects local control while enhancing the election security without imposing excessive regulations. I don't think it's too much to ask to have local counties or municipalities use the .gov, .texas.gov. I don't think that's too much to ask. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Hale? Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes? Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 657? If not, the chair recognizes Vice Chair Busey to close on a bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I close.
Thank you. Any members, any questions? If there are no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? The chair hears none. The bill is left pending. Chair lays out House Bill 665 and recognizes Vice Chair Busey to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. House Bill 665 would require the creation of 2 databases on the Secretary of State's website used for posting comprehensive election information. The first database would build on what the Secretary of State already posts online for candidates and office holders at the federal, state, and county level each election cycle. We want to expand this requirement to include elections at the local level for city council, mayor, and school board. This database would include the name, office title, including any district, place, or position, and a notation that the person is an incumbent, whether the office is elected at large or by district, the dates for the preceding and upcoming elections to that office, a public mailing address, a public telephone number if available, and a public email address if available. The second database would aggregate election notices for all elections at the state, county, and local level. The county with whom a declaration of candidacy is filed, a state or county chair of a political party, or the presiding officer of a political party's convention shall provide information about a candidate or office holder to the Secretary of State. A political subdivision shall provide information about a candidate or office holder to the county in which the political subdivision is located, and the county shall forward that information to the Secretary of State. Last session, this proposal passed out of this committee and the full House with overwhelming support. We want to continue to fight to get this done. There's no fiscal implication implied to the state. And this is really just about transparency. Sometimes it is hard, especially in smaller local elections, to find out when the election is, who our elected officials are, and how to just be more transparent to the voters to be more prepared. That's what this is let's online transparency about our elections in the state of Texas. And with that, I'll answer any questions and request a right to close. Thank you.
Good job. Members, any questions for Vice Chair Busey? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to testimony. Chair calls Dr. Laura Presley with True Texas Elections. Dr. Laura Presley, I show you register as Dr. Laura Presley with True Texas Elections, and you are for the bill.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Representative Busey, I like the bill. Thank you for doing this. I would like you to consider potentially expanding this to include the election results of these local races onto the Secretary of State's website. Right now, all the county, information and the state level information for results are there, but the local races are not. And sometimes it's hunt and peck, trying to figure out who won, has it been canvassed, et cetera. So I'd just like to recommend that you maybe expand that. Just, okay, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, members. Any questions? The chair calls Marloza Marin with Election Protection Manager. Or no, you're with Common Cause Texas. That was your title. Ma'am, I show you registered as Marliza Marin. Am I
Marliza.
close?
Yes.
And you are with Common Cause Texas, and you are for the bill?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Shaheen, Vice Chair Busey, and members of the House Election Committee. My name is Marliza Marin. I am the Election Protection Manager at Common Cause Texas, and I am here to testify in support of HB 665. At Common Cause, we help run the Texas Election Protection Program. The program provides nonpartisan information and support to Texas voters. County websites largely do a good job of providing the information and support to Texas voters. But right now, centralizing that data would require visiting each individual county's website and compiling that information ourselves. It's difficult in November of even-numbered years and near impossible in the odd-numbered years or off-season elections. I know because I've done it several times. At best, the result is a piecemeal. At worst, it's outdated and inaccurate. This information isn't only helpful to groups like ours. According to Texas Realtors, more than 11% of our state's population moved from one place in Texas to another in 2023. That's more than 3.3 million people. It would be great for them to be able to look at the election information for their current county and their future county in the same place. It would also be helpful for county officials to be able to see which other counties have similar races on their ballots so that they can collaborate and share advice. And it would be helpful for reporters looking at wider trends and specific candidates. Our Secretary of State runs an accessible, organized, and trusted website. I reference it in my work daily. A centralized database of election information would be an excellent resource for Texas voters, and we ask that you pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, very much. Members, are there any questions? Thank you, ma'am, very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 665? If not, the chair recognizes Vice Chair Busey to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
Thank you, Vice Chair Busey. If there are no objections, the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? The chair has none. The bill is left pending. All right, last one, members. Chair lays out House Bill 429 and recognizes Chair Guillen to explain the bill. The chair offers a committee substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Members, ever since my children learned to scribble, my wife and I have taken them with us to vote and have had them fill out our ballots on our behalf in an effort to instill in them the values and tradition of voting. We're not alone. Many of our constituents have done so themselves. We believe that this exercise has tremendously helped our children take an interest in elections, in the voting process, and in our government. But over the years, a number of constituents, including myself, have been stopped from doing so by voting clerks at polling places. The election code allows a child under 18 years of age to accompany their parent to the voting station, but falls short of mentioning whether or not the child can mark the ballot. This committee substitute to House Bill 429 simply adds that children under the age of 16 can read or mark the ballot under the direction of their parent. Members, we passed this bill as HB 1208 unanimously out of this committee and overwhelmingly out of the House the last two sessions, only for it to die for getting to the Senate too late. The simple measure will ensure that parents are not stripped of the opportunity to teach their kids about one of the most important rights and responsibilities that we have as Americans. The committee substitute is just a ledge council draft with no changes. I can help answer any questions Joe may have.
Thank you, Chair Guillen. Mr. Raymond?
I was going to say, I thought we passed this. We didn't,
Yeah,
but the Senate,
Twice already out
so it
of the
was just
House.
too late in the process, or did
Mostly, yeah.
the Lieutenant Governor kill it, or?
No. I mean, if that was the case, there's 40 some others that I had happen like that. So last session alone. So it's just, you know, if you get it over the Senate too late, it's hard to get it through there at the end.
I think also, though, we amended it that you could vote at, you're 17, lower the voting age to 17. Would you be open to that amendment?
Lower the voting age to 17? Yeah, no, it would not be germane.
Only if it's ranked choice voting.
Hey, members, any questions for Chairman Guillen? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll recognize your right to close. Chair calls Cindy Castillo with Texas Eagle Forum and self. Ma'am, I show you registered as Cindy Castillo with Texas Eagle Forum, representing Texas Eagle Forum and yourself, and you are against the legislation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, please proceed.
I'll explain. And I understand the heart of you doing this. Having been an election judge for a long time, we welcome families with children to come in. However, I think this canon should be taught at home, the actual marking of a ballot. When we used to have paper ballots, we did have a time period where we had sample ballots with Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and things that the children could play with and the children could practice voting. And that I understand, but the ballot is a sacred thing for a voter. We have an age of 18. We have concerns that an election judge will not really be able to question, is this really your child? Are you really under this age? We never want to get into a situation where we're helping enable a paid vote delivery, where somebody's bringing in somebody who doesn't care and they're marking the ballot for them. We don't want that situation, and it makes an election judge have a really hard time. Our duty is to deliver a proper election, and a child doesn't have ID. A child, you can't question if a child belongs to a parent, if it's really their child. And so it puts us in a really hard situation to deliver, for sure, the very best election we can deliver. I think there are just other ways to do this. We welcome children to come with parents, to stand there with them. They can watch them if they can see it's high, but holding a child up could be dangerous with the weight of the equipment, because if you leaned on it, you could knock it down. And we give kids stickers. We do everything to celebrate them being there. We just would rather, just like we don't practice smoking at 9, we don't practice having a bank account at 12. We have some things that we have ages for, and it's a right or a privilege that you earn with age. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Raymond?
Thanks, Chairman. Man, I agree with you on a lot of stuff, but I got to say, think harder about this one, because I think it's okay. It's okay.
It's marking the ballot.
We had testimony earlier about 60% of the people not voting. And part of why that is, because we're not teaching kids at a young age how important it is to go vote. And what the representative, the chairman, is doing here, I think it's one of the greatest things we could do, is to people that are willing to take their children with them to the polling place, to tell them how important it is that they participate in this democratic society, and to let them do something. Believe me, the parents aren't going to let them decide how to vote. They're going to vote the way the voter, who you gave that ballot to, they're going to vote the way they want, but they let their kid do this. I'm just saying, this is a really good step to do away with that 60% of people that are not voting. See, I'm getting a thumbs up from the libertarians over there. So I'm just telling you, think about it a little bit more, because what I don't like is that it's going to show up on the HRO, the House Research Organization, that you're against it. And I know you're not really, not in your heart. I know you're not.
My heart wants to protect the ballot. We had an excellent way to help kids get excited about voting, and that was when we were almost always holding an election in an elementary school. The teachers would bring kids by. We would stop and talk to them about voting. They would see the process.
Well, let me ask you
this. That was a wonderful way to introduce children to voting.
Let me ask you this. Do you, the Eagle Forum, right? You were the Eagle Forum?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So do you all, after we do our sessions, do you all, do these rankings on votes and stuff? Do you all do that?
We do score votes.
Score.
We haven't decided all
Okay, so don't,
that just
at
comes
least, how
later.
about the compromise? Don't score this one.
I've got a committee on that. I'm not alone. I don't do this by
But
myself.
I know you're a leader.
So I
know you're a
cannot make a
leader.
promise.
I know you're a leader on that, so go with your heart.
So I want you all to really, really remember what a privilege it is to vote. It's a privilege, and we want our children to want to get there. And I understand this is probably going to flow through, but I just want sanctity of the ballot, and that this is a privilege, and we don't practice doing things that, aren't legal yet, as a general rule with our children.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, any other questions? Ms. Swanson?
Yes, thank you. I also share some of your concerns, and as somebody here who's held elections since 1988, held many, many elections, and in the early days, they were, actually many of those years, they were in an elementary school, and they had, the kids were in school, and they passed us all the time in the hallway, and, nobody got abused or anything. And so I also, it was great. You had your machine that you explained it on, that it was Mickey Mouse versus whoever, and I think one race the choices were between Bonnie and Clyde and other things that meant nothing to the children. George Washington versus Thomas Jefferson, that was another one. So I did, like you say, spend a lot of time just trying to, encourage the kids and everything. I think these days, if I were an election judge, which of course I'm not legally allowed since I'm an elected official, if there were no law against it, I wouldn't mind, a younger kid where obviously, the parents pointing, yeah, that one right there. And although it would slow things down in the ballot booth. But I also have a problem with that 16 on up, they look like an adult, especially those girls. And, is it really their child, or is it they're not sworn in, don't have to have ID. And by 16, they can be very opinionated. Their friends and their teachers are all for who knows who, which is not the same as how the parents believe. And I would not want to see them pressuring the parent, and especially in a situation where perhaps the child has much better English skills than the parent. I would want it to be where, it's back to any witness you use, like they have to do everything properly. So although I love what Representative Raymond is saying, I think that we need to be really, really careful here.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions?
Yes.
Did you, Ms. Isaac?
Representative Swanson, I was wondering, the last place my 16-year-old boys wanted to be was with me going to a polling place. So I'm thinking, we're talking about little children here. Would it give you less heartburn if it had under age 10 or something? I mean,
it truly would, yes. I'm not saying I'm in favor of the bill at that, but it would give me a lot less heartburn if they had to be pretty young. Because then it'd be hard to fake it that that's not really their child. But again, at 10, they're probably not that opinionated yet, or mom and daddy are not listening to them. They're like, you're a kid. And whereas the older ones, they might truly overcome the opinions of the parents if they really are the child, especially for someone who's a lower information voter or who has, perhaps they haven't been a citizen very long, perhaps they have lesser English skills than their child, which happens a lot.
I didn't get asked, so I have no opinion on that, right? Okay.
Any other members, any other questions? Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Chair calls Terry Putnam, representing himself. Welcome, sir. I show you registered as Terry Putnam, representing yourself, and you are against the bill.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I would like to say up front that I am for educating our children about voting and the significance and the importance of it. However, I think this is the wrong venue for education of children. I think there are probably other options, and there's a lot of smart people who can think about other options, but some of the issues that I have already been articulated, like the identity of the child. Who knows if it's the child of the parent? There's no way to validate that. The thing that bothers me is it increases the complexity of the staff. Now you've got another child in there, and they can be disruptive, not intentionally maybe, but they can be disruptive to other voters that are on adjacent machines. But the main thing is, I think that will slow the voting process down, because that will take longer at that particular polling station. I live in Sun City. We have 15,000 voters. I have seen voters leave when there is a line that's too long, and they can't stand for a long period of time. So anything that increases the time for a voter to get in and cast their vote, I think is detrimental to the whole process. And so I think this complexity will slow down the voting process, and I don't think that will be advantageous. So
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Members, any questions? Thank you, sir, very much. Chair calls Kathy Hagler. And you're representing yourself. Ma'am, I show you registered as Kathy Hagler. You are representing yourself, and you are against the bill.
Yes, sir, that's
Okay,
correct.
thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad Cindy went before me this time. She got to break the water before I got here. House Bill 429 seems very warm and fuzzy, and it is very civic-minded for us to give our children an opportunity to learn how to vote, but I have a lot of different concerns. Not all of these have been mentioned, and I have not seen the committee substitute. But first of all, the bill says that there would be instructions created for parents, but there's nothing that says the parents have to read it or acknowledge that they've read it before the child is allowed to accompany them. Is there a form where we would record the name of the children, their supposed children who came and voted with them? Because normally we would have a record of everybody who came in and put their hands on a machine. Another question is, how many children are allowed? How many children under 16 can a parent bring with them? Does this bill limit it just to one child? What if a mom comes in and she's got 4 kids ranging from 2 to 14 years old? You can imagine what that would be like there at the voting booth. Is this going to hold up a long line of voters? That's already been discussed. I'd like to talk about the voting booth. Usually your voting booth is not too much larger than what this little podium is right here. And if you have someone from the election staff come and help you vote, that normally makes a voter have to turn sideways and the assistant has to reach in with their hand because there's not really room for 2 people at a voting booth. So when you start talking about adding children and you're crowding out the voters next to you, it becomes a geography kind of a question. So we'll be crowding other voters who didn't bring their children. And I know this is up to the parent, but it will totally strip away their right to a secret ballot. Because if you're saying to your child, okay, vote for Donald Duck for president, vote for Minnie Mouse for Congress, then now you're telling everyone else how you're voting. They're going to be hearing that at the other voting booths. And it will be distracting to other voters. And then this one is a little bit far-fetched, so I'm just going to let you know I'm exaggerating here. But let's just say that I'm a union boss, and I put 4 of my union members in front of me in line. They check in, and they're each at their voting station, and I bring my child with me. And so I'm going to say in a loud voice, okay, we're voting for Donald Duck for president. Now we're going to vote for Minnie Mouse for Congress. I've just told my other union members how they need to vote. And it could be abused in a way to electioneer inside the room unless we put something in there about volume. And we do already have Election Code 61.008A8, which allows any child under 18 years old to accompany a parent that's been admitting for voting. So we really don't need a law to allow the children to come in with the parent anyway. All that this does is allow them to vote, except that our law says that children under 18 are not allowed to vote. So they should not be casting a ballot for their parent. The problem is in them touching the machines and doing the actual voting. We already have the opportunity to bring your children in, to explain to them what you're doing, to show them what you're doing without them having to touch anything or cast a ballot, so we don't really need this. And if they were touching and assisting, our bill says that's not about assisting a voter, so that's a different argument. And just remember, the more people in the voting room, the more chance there is for fraud, and the harder it is for the election workers to monitor and keep the peace. And as mentioned before, a while back, we had kid-friendly booths where you could vote for George Washington or Thomas Jefferson. And if we could come up with a plan that would work like that, where we can teach our kids while we're at the polling place, I think that would be great. But if you decide to move forward, I think we might want to consider a pilot program in a county that has a lot of poll watchers so that we can see how it works out in a couple of those counties. And then another solution would be in 31.131A of this bill, just delete the words "and mark." And then again, under 64.002B, just delete the words "and mark," so that the child could be with the parent. They could talk about it, discuss it, but they couldn't actually touch the machine. That's where I have the problem. And then it would be okay, they've actually cast the ballot once the ballot has been printed, so then the child could actually scan it in, because that's not technically casting the ballot, so they could have hands on at that point. But those are some of my concerns with the bill.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, any questions? Thank you so much, ma'am, for being
Thank you,
here
sir.
today. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 429 and its committee sub? If not, the chair recognizes Chair Guillen to close on the bill.
All right, thank you. Just to clarify, law already allows the kids to go in up until their 18th birthday. As many kids as they have can go in already. That this bill doesn't touch that. We also put in the 16-year-old limit to, just in case somebody was concerned about, whether or not that person, the child that was coming with them was actually a child. So we lowered it from 18 to 16 to help with that. Anyway, I appreciate the opportunity, and I'd ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Chair Guillen. Members, any questions? The committee sub is withdrawn, and if there is no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? The chair hears none. The bill is left pending. Members, that concludes today's agenda. Is there any further business for the committee to address? If not, the chair moves to adjourn. Is there objection? Hearing none, the election committee stands adjourned, subject to the call of the chair.